candidate pledge that Elizabeth and Lisa, you're going to come up and sign.
Okay.
Yes, I think this is a photo op.
It's got a big fat
It's actually just for Lisa to sign, but I will observe.
Oh, okay. Lisa, you have to sign it. Elizabeth,
Yeah.
why don't you read it?
I will read it.
Yeah.
And I will read it. You can sign it up here because I came up with the idea of a pledge for every candidate in this election because under the policy and rules of the Green Party, I'm not allowed to whip any member of parliament ever. And I don't know, I find a lot of Canadians don't know what this concept of whipping is. What does that mean? So the other parties, all of them, the Conservatives, the New Democrats, and Liberals, tell elected members of parliament who have come to Ottawa to serve their constituents, because that is the only job description of a member of parliament, is the one found in the Constitution. It says members of parliament are there to represent their constituencies. However, the growing and pernicious and perverse and dangerous power of political parties exerts itself over its members of parliament and says, well, listen, you may think you knew a thing or two before you got elected, but as of now, you are a pumpkin, a gourd, a vessel, which must do as I say, or you'll be severely, turned into pie. There'll be something bad that will happen to you. And actually, the number and range of punishments that a federal party leader can mete out to their members of parliament is quite severe. You can ask me about this later if you want. But so I realized I want desperately to ensure that every member of parliament elected as a Green understands that it was devastating to what we stand for as a party if they ever heckled in the House of Commons. This is a practical, real-life consideration for me as member of parliament. Before Bruce Heyer joined me, so there are now two of us, I had to say Bruce, because I'd heard him heckle when he was an NDPer. I said, Bruce, and then I even heard him heckle when he was an independent. I said, Bruce, if you join us, and you're a member of the Green Party of Canada, and of course I did want him to join us because he's a terrific environmentalist, I said, do you think you can do it? Do you think you can promise me that you'll never heckle? So I started thinking about what do we do after the 2015 election, and we have a whole lot more Green MPs and serving in the House of Commons. I thought it was important that people make the pledge to their constituents, that a member of parliament makes a set of promises so they're not having to deal with me telling them what to do. I can merely remind them of what they promised their constituents. And I don't think I'll have any problems. I don't think I'll have any problems with Lisa. So this is what she's going to pledge. And every candidate for the Green Party of Canada across Canada signs this pledge. I pledge to conduct myself with integrity and treat others with respect. I pledge, if elected, to publish all my expenses on my website. I pledge to conduct myself with civility, to never heckle in the House. I pledge to work tirelessly for my constituents, to keep their interests and the well-being of Canada and the planet paramount. I pledge to make the voters in Vancouver Centre proud. Do you pledge? Do you so pledge?
I so pledge.
Okay. Then you must take this Sharpie pen here.
Put it on the...
We can do it here. Yeah. I will hold it 5. You can sign.
Lisa, turn around after you're done.
Okay.
Sorry. By the way, to date, Bruce Heyer and I are the only MPs that post all our expenses online.
And I won't have a lot of them.
And believe me, you actually will have more than you think, but we have less than the others. August 1st. 2015.
Thank you.
Okay, so smile on the other side.
Yeah, I want to know, though, which one of us has to drag this into Parliament every day?
We're not allowed to bring it into Parliament.
Oh, okay.
It's okay.
It's going in your office.
Yeah.
Do you have a little pocket card of it?
Yeah, no, yeah, I think it's really important for Canadians to know
Yes.
Yes.
that only Green MPs are taking this pledge. And the other party leaders would actually insist that none of these things be pursued with any level of seriousness. I suppose they might not hate it if their candidates had integrity. But I know they don't want us to treat the others with, they wouldn't want their candidates to treat people in other parties with respect, because it would run against a certain number of storylines that involve turning the House of Commons into a gladiatorial contest in which no holds are barred.
Oh, listen, I taught preschool for a while, and they're far better behaved than Parliament.
Okay, that's great.
Awesome.
Take it away, Adriane.
You're going to be right back. That's meaningless that I felt.
You know, you can sign something tonight too. There are Lisa Barrett's nomination papers. Yeah, they're in the, but they have to live in your writing.
Yes,
So
if
maybe,
you live in Vancouver, Granville, please see me. Somebody from writing assistance.
so if you're in Vancouver Center, then please go to the back. There's right in the little back table, and you can sign her papers. And she needs, how many signatures?
125.
125. So that would be awesome. She can get that filed right away then. Okay, now it is my pleasure to introduce to you Elizabeth. Well, I don't really need to. Everybody knows Elizabeth May. But in case you don't know a few of the background things, you know why this election is so phenomenal in my mind and has such incredible opportunity for change. And don't we all yearn for change? I mean, honestly, we need to get the current government out. And in my mind, the replacement will be a minority government with the Greens holding a balance of power, working in collaboration with whoever is the party with the most votes. But I sense a minority is a distinct possibility. And why Elizabeth with a caucus of Greens would have such an incredible impact is really shown in the record of Elizabeth's performance. There is no one I talk to who doesn't say, oh my goodness, Elizabeth May, she's the one I listen to all the time in terms of her, she reads the legislation, she comments on it in an intelligent way, she puts forward like hundreds of amendments, she stays up all night, she's the only one that sits there through all night sittings, day after day, making sure that attention is being paid to the problems of the legislation that the Conservatives are pushing through. She has won awards by her peers. These are fellow parliamentarians who vote in secret ballot. So in 2012, Parliamentarian of the Year. 2013, Hardest Working MP. 2014, Best Orator. The Hills Times, which is like the guru paper of everything inside Parliament, also has recognized her as hardest working constituency MP. These are accolades given to people who excel above and beyond what anybody would expect her to be, and Elizabeth has done that year after year that she's there. And she is changing people's opinion of how Parliament can be, how real representation can be. So I give you Elizabeth May.
I didn't get involved in politics for a long time. Well, I was, involved in political issues and pressuring different levels of government, but I wasn't myself a card-carrying member of any party. And Adriane, there was a leadership race coming up in the Green Party, and she was so persistent. She kept telling me I had to run. She kept telling me, I said, I don't know, I have to quit my job, and I don't really know if I want to leave Sierra Club and what I really want. And I had a lot of things to sort through. But boy, she was persistent. And when I finally gave in and said, okay, I'll do it, and then she said, oh, thank goodness, because I found out, I think it was a little later, she didn't tell me right away, but Jim Harris, who was the outgoing leader of the Green Party at the time, wanted Adriane to run. And she promised him that she could get me to run, and the fallback was if I didn't agree, she had to. So it's been longer than I ever imagined, 9 whole years that I've been leader of the Green Party. It's really daunting to imagine, and I never would have thought this would happen. Here we are in 2015, I'm on the verge of the 3rd time leading the Green Party of Canada into a federal election campaign. 2008, 2011, and now 2015. And it is true, as I was saying earlier without a microphone, that all indications point to the most expensive, difficult, long-haul election in Canadian history, thanks to Stephen Harper manipulating election laws through changes made in the so-called Fair Elections Act. Year before last, I'm sure you all remember the Fair Elections Act. We put up a good fight against it because it unquestionably will make it harder for many different groups in Canada to vote, particularly young people, homeless people, First Nations, and any older Canadian who has of late given up a driver's license. I anticipate all manner of difficulty for people who don't expect that they're going to have trouble voting. I had a conversation the other day with one of my favorite young singer-songwriters. She's from Atlantic Canada, so you may not know her yet. Her name's Gabrielle Papillon. And she was performing at an event in Nova Scotia in my old riding Central Nova as a rallying round for a candidate there a couple weeks ago. And she said, well, I don't know what I'm going to do to be sure I can vote because I'm going to be going on tour, and I used to live in Pictou County, but now I was living in Montreal, and now I'm living in Halifax, so I haven't voted in Halifax yet. I can't go home and vote where my parents used to live because they've moved, and so I don't have anything with that my old address there doesn't match with their new address. But she said, I think I'll be fine because I've got my passport. And that's why I had to tell her, no, passport won't work. This is going to throw people for a loop. So in all of the furor about the so-called Fair Elections Act, one of the pieces initially that got changed due to public pressure, rare for Stephen Harper to agree to change any of his legislation, but they did concede on a couple of points on the so-called Unfair Elections Act, so-called Fair Elections Act. The Unfair Elections Act, where they conceded was that at first reading, the bill would have made it illegal for the Chief Electoral Officer of Canada to warn Canadians if electoral fraud was afoot on election day. So there was a lot of concern about that provision. The minister, of course, who brought us the Fair Elections Act, you might remember, is Pierre Poilievre. His nickname is Skippy. Yeah, they call him Skippy. So Pierre Poilievre did concede that this best law in the history of time, if you were to listen to him, actually could be improved by letting the Chief Electoral Officer of Elections Canada not be tied up and duct taped and put someplace away from where he could tell Canadians if something fraudulent was afoot. So one of the lesser known changes in that act was to say that if a writ drop occurred, if a Prime Minister orchestrated a writ drop to create a longer election period than our traditional 5-week elections, that for every additional day, that party could spend more money. Now, I think it's worth going over this with you because you're keen and you're green and you're here tonight, but I hope I don't lose you in the arcane nuances of all this. No elections law has ever restricted the amount of money a party can spend before the writ drops. They can spend zillions. I don't know how much Stephen Harper has already spent in attack ads. He started with attack ads. It was January 2007 was the first time ever that a political party, the Conservatives, but no political party had ever bought TV ad time for political ads before January 2007. Political ads far away from the time of an election. Because the election happened in September 2008, but the attack ads against Stéphane Dion started in January 2007. That's the period of time outside of a writ when there were absolutely no spending restrictions in place. There still are no spending restrictions in place for what you can spend before a writ period. So, riddle me this. why would Stephen Harper change the Elections Act to allow him to have a longer writ period and spend more money inside the writ period? So it's a math problem. If you have $50 million and you're the Conservative Party, but you're only allowed to spend $25 million during the writ period, but you can spend as much as you want before the writ, why did it matter to change the law to say you can spend more money inside the writ period? Because money spent inside the writ period gets reimbursed to that party by 60% from the people of Canada. Which means the horrible attack ads we see before the writ drops don't cost the taxpayers anything. But the horrible attack ads we see during the writ period, we will spend 60% of the value of that, giving it back to the bigger parties. Now, there's, of course, as is often the case with Stephen Harper's stratagem, more than one goal here. I think there are two others. The second one is to inconvenience and undermine and perhaps destroy the Liberals and the New Democrats, because they are big parties and they have buckets of money. We don't have buckets of money. We do have more money than we used to have, but we'd say we have thimblefuls to their bucketfuls. Why do I think it hurts the Liberals and the NDP more is that those guys are committed to running the same kind of campaign as Stephen Harper. They're going to buy ad time on TV and they're going to run attack ads. And they're going to rent big airplanes. Greens are the only party committed to carbon neutral campaigns. So their contracts for big ticket items like TV ad time and airplanes will now have to start 6 weeks earlier than they planned. The third reason I think Stephen Harper likes an early and illegitimate long 11-week election campaign is that since it will be typified by nastiness and attack ads and relentless bludgeoning of the electorate, I'm very concerned that by October 19th, Canadians will be feeling as though they're so darn sick of it that they think they can punish politicians by not voting. And of course, what the Conservatives really want is for Canadians who are not going to vote Conservative not to vote. So, we have a big challenge in this election campaign. We have to find a way to get out the positive message that the Green Party offers something different. Respectful politic, a commitment to evidence-based decision-making, and a willingness to work across party lines to accomplish what needs to be done. We are in that unique in Canadian politics. We also have to find a way to persuade Canadians, particularly young people, First Nations, people who are disillusioned, disenchanted. We have to persuade everybody we know to vote. We have to persuade them that because of the Unfair Elections Act, no, I forgot to tell you some good news. Oh, thank you. Forgot to tell you the good news about Pierre Poilievre. Earlier today, the Green Party of Canada announced the confirmed candidate running against Pierre Poilievre, and it is a very prominent constitutional lawyer who at one time was in the Liberal leadership race, Deborah Coyne. So Deborah Coyne is running against Pierre Poilievre. I'm pretty happy about that. Not that I don't like Skippy, but yeah. So, the other thing we have to convince everyone we know, especially 5 people who didn't vote in 2011, and create a personal sense of duty and cooperation, that you find as many people as you can, and take on the responsibility of getting them to advance polls. Because thanks to the Unfair Elections Act, if there's something wrong with their paperwork, like my friend Gabrielle Papillon, if she'd only found out at the last minute, we need to make sure that we help people get registered to vote. One little tip is, once the writ drops, any day during the writ period, if you go to the returning officer, to their actual office, you can vote anytime. So for people who haven't voted before, may have patchy paperwork, take them to the returning officer, get them registered to vote, and if they feel like voting right then, get them to do so. And in this, I'm not asking this in a partisan sense. I don't really care how they're planning to vote. I'm sure of one thing, anyone who didn't vote in 2011 was not intending to vote for Harper. The 40% of Canadians who didn't vote in 2011, and take this on board too, because it is the best evidence against this demon strategic voting, vote splitting nonsense that we hear nonstop. We don't have a problem in Canada of vote splitting. We have a problem of vote abandoning. The single largest block of voters in this country for the last number of elections has been the people who stayed home. The 40% of Canadians who didn't vote in 2011, had they voted, had more votes than the Conservative Party. Even if a fraction of those folks had voted, we would have not had a false majority under Stephen Harper. So let me end with some good news, because my beautiful friends and assistants and everybody is giving me the signs from the door. You may have noticed that Adriane mentioned earlier that Claire Martin and Lynn Cornby already left to get back for the announcement that I'm making tomorrow. So I have to kind of get back too, so we're going to have to take off soon. But the really good news about this election is that we can do this. We need to create and mobilize a citizens movement that gets out a lot of votes. And we need to let Canadians know that they've got the chance to vote for something they can believe in, to actually make real change in art, not just in who sits in the Prime Minister's office, but in the culture and the content and the climate of Canadian politics. That we need to restore democracy, and we're the only party that even understands the many ways that democracy is hanging by a thread in this country. So if we can, and I know we can, over the coming weeks, assuming they drop the writ tomorrow, we are non-stop running and running and running to make sure we elect Greens to Parliament. Because these wonderful things will happen. Absolutely certain that by October 20th, 2015, Stephen Harper will be packing his bags. Maureen will be looking for the cat carriers. They'll be taking down the pictures of Stephen Harper that have adorned the walls of every room, and they will be moving to a place of, I hope, I have nothing against Stephen Harper personally. I'm looking forward to him having a nice long rest. Because goodness knows, the poor man, we see him every night, the only person running everything in Canada all by himself in a dark room as he turns out the light and leaves. Party of one, exemplified in a Conservative ad. That's how it works. He has no advisors, he's doing the whole, this is not a stretch. Party of one. So he needs to take a rest. Goodness knows, destroying all our laws and setting us back and selling out our sovereignty, the People's Republic of China, these things are taxing on any human being. So we need him to go to his retirement. The other thing I'm equally certain of is that it will be a minority parliament. And in that minority parliament, the very best way to ensure that we get rid of first past the post, that we get real climate action, that we bring in a pharmacare plan so that no Canadian has to choose between their food and their medicine, that we push every single party and all the MPs to start thinking about their constituents as their prime responsibility and shut down the illegitimate and dangerous levels of power exerted from the Prime Minister's office. We can do all this as Greens because we believe in a Canada that works, and we believe in a Canada that works together. We can do this together. We can get Lisa elected and Wes elected, and we can get Lynn Cornby elected, and Claire Martin, and me, and Joanne Roberts, and Paul Manley, and Deborah Coyne, and Mary Lou Rabineau, and Boardman. Well, there's a lot of us running, and we're running because we want to work for Canada. We want to get our country back. Yeah. And I'm grateful to all of you for your support, and I apologize ahead of time for having you. Thank you very much. Was to make sure I didn't leave before the pledge auction, which we're now going to do. Okay, we are. Okay, so how many of you have been at a Green Party pledge auction before? Okay, you're going to have fun. Any other questions? My friend Bruce Heyer, who's my other member, the other Green Party member from Thunder Bay, Superior North, and I'll be campaigning in Thunder Bay next Saturday night. But Bruce Heyer said that you asked about fairy dust. He says my problem is that I'm on drugs, and he says I'm addicted to hopium. Hopium, yes. He's bad on puns. Did you have a question? No. Anybody else for a question? No.
The secret deals that Harper made.
Yes.
Keep the details secret for my, and the teaching about that is happening and made somewhere else.
Yeah, so the question was about the kinds of secret trade deals Harper makes. The very good news we got earlier today is that Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement negotiations broke down. We'll not see a Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement arrived at before this election. We have tragically seen Stephen Harper in secret, in cabinet, without any hearings held in the Parliamentary Trade Committee, nor any proper debate or vote in Parliament, but purely through the treaty-making powers that in our Constitution fall under the category, I kid you not, of royal prerogative. That's how Stephen Harper and the Cabinet ratified the Canada-China Investment Treaty. We can't get out from that one. And it runs for 31 years from the point of ratification. So our first opportunity to be free of this deal will be the year 2045. I'm afraid that neither of the other opposition party leaders understand this agreement, and we need to have it be discussed. That's one of the reasons I'm so determined to be in the debates, is not so we can say, I mean, the social media stuff on this, I find it distressing because NDPers are constantly saying that there's something wrong with Greens for believing we should be in the debates. Obviously, we should be in the debates. If I'm not in the debate, who is going to raise the Canada-China Investment Treaty and point out how a responsible government confronts the reality that Stephen Harper has sold our national sovereignty down the river, specifically the Yangtze River. And Gus Van Harten, who's a law prof at Osgoode Hall Law School, has written a new book. It's actually called Sold Down the Yangtze, and you can get it off Amazon. I really recommend that people read it. As this election campaign goes on, we need to raise what Stephen Harper has done to sell out our sovereignty and the fact that we're locked in for 31 years. So what do we do to be able to get back our laws, such as the ones that were destroyed in Bill C-38? It's going to take a very strong degree of resolve to act like a country as opposed to acting like a raw resource colony for the People's Republic of China.
The unceded First Nations here in BC who have never signed a treaty with the Crown, many are asserting their sovereignty and trying to fight, say, the Trans-Canada Pipeline from crossing their lands. What is your position on the issue of their sovereignty and rights?
Well, thank God they have those rights. Thank God the Chilcotin decision of the Supreme Court of Canada came down before Harper ratified the Canada-China Investment Treaty, or the Supreme Court of Canada decision itself could have triggered a complaint from the People's Republic of China. Thank God and thank First Nations for being on the front line and defending all of us. We need to stand in solidarity and be respectful and understand that sometimes we won't agree with every decision First Nations governments make. But in British Columbia, where would we be if not for First Nations standing up to defend our culture? Don't be misled by nice, friendly NDP candidates, such as the one running against Lynn Cornby, who keeps saying that the NDP opposes Kinder Morgan expansion. They don't. They don't. The only party that opposes Kinder Morgan expansion is the Green Party of Canada. We're the only party that opposes risky tankers full of bitumen and diluent on our coastlines. It's not a question of, there's no ambiguity about this. We're the only party opposing Energy East, and we're the only party opposing Kinder Morgan, and that's for and Peter O'Neill interviewed Tom Mulcair in the Vancouver Sun and reported that Thomas Mulcair had ridiculed my position on pipelines and tankers. Now, it's a position of principle that there's no reason economically, and there's certainly a lot of reasons environmentally, but even on the economics, it makes no sense to be committed to a policy of rapid expansion of oil sands mines to ship out bitumen raw to be processed in other countries. This makes no sense. And that's at the core of every one of the major pipeline proposals currently before us: Energy East, Keystone, Enbridge, and Kinder Morgan. They're all about the same thing: getting raw bitumen to Tidewater. So another reason that it makes no sense that Harper, Mulcair, and Trudeau have accepted debates that shut out the Green Party. No one is going to be in the room. And that may be why corporate media and private interests are sponsoring debates without rules and sidelining the CBC debates that we always had. National televised leaders debates in this election may well not happen at all because the Greens are invited to them. And first the Conservatives said they would boycott, and now Mulcair says he won't show up either. And the open question is, will the national networks run debates in which the only parties that are still willing to debate are the Liberals, the Greens, and the Bloc? Would anyone watch debates where the official opposition leader and the Prime Minister decide it's not worth their time to come before Canadians and debate? This is a very treacherous ground on which I walk in politics, and I did not expect what happened yesterday, because the NDP had given us their word that they would stand with the Liberals and the Greens and the Bloc and insist with the CBC and Radio Canada, CTV and Global. We all agreed months ago that we would stand firm and hold the debates with an empty podium for Stephen Harper. And we were sure that by October 7th and 8th, when those debates were supposed to happen, that he would not be able to withstand the public pressure to show up and stand at his podium. The only thing that would unravel that strategy, and it did occur to me in some of my cynical moments, but I pushed the thought out of my head, would be if the NDP betrayed that commitment and decided to say they wouldn't show up either, thus collapsing what has been a feature of every election in this country since 1968, not to serve leaders of parties, but to provide a forum accessible to the largest number of Canadians, all watching at the same time to see what they made of the way different political parties presented themselves and how they responded to ideas and debate. Since 1968, we've had national televised leaders debates. In 2011, they reached 14 million people. And as things now stand, the only debate that may take place at all is going to be August 6th. Certainly it's the only debate I'm invited to in which Stephen Harper and Tom Mulcair have said they'll show up, is next week, hosted by Maclean's Magazine on an August Thursday. I do not think that a lot of Canadians are going to be tuning in to try to find City TV on their cable to watch a debate on an August evening when the election is in October. This is very scary stuff, that the national televised leaders debate could be so manipulated by the Conservatives and the Democrats. So I'm horrified by it. I hope that we can create enough public pressure that we can get Mr. Mulcair to reconsider and show up. And if he shows up and the podium remains empty for Stephen Harper, he'll show up too. Anyway, I'm afraid I have to dash or I'll miss my flight back to be there. If you want to see me again, turn on your TV tomorrow morning.
And we're actually hosting a Watch the Debate on August 6th. So it's going to be at Mahoney and Sons by the Convention Center downtown, and it starts at 4:30 because it's a 7:30 Eastern time, debate time. So 4:30, Mahoney and Sons downtown. You can watch Elizabeth debate the rest. I'm wiping. Okay, I want to really thank everybody here. I mean, this has been a phenomenal night. I am so pleased at your enthusiastic response. You have been generous. and warm and supportive, and that's a great way to kick off a campaign. So woohoo to all of you. And I think there's still maybe some food. I think you're allowed to use the chairs for a little while, but Elizabeth does have to leave till 10, so we can have a few conversations. And again, have a wonderful night.